It's back to college soon for millions of young Americans, but what are they going back to? More pro-Hamas demonstrations, blocking access to classes, more leftist indoctrination from extremist professors? Well, joining us to share some insights is Nicholas Giordano. He's Campus Reform Higher Education Fellow and Professor of Political Science at Suffolk Community College in New York. Nicholas, it's good to have you with us again. So parents and students paying exorbitant amounts of money for higher education. So what are they getting for their investment this fall? What do you see happening?
Well, we see the increasing radicalization going on, and I don't think parents want to spend, anywhere from $40,000 to $90,000 per year for their children to come home indoctrinated, radical extremism. Since 2009, Campus Reform has been reporting on the increasing extremism that we're witnessing. And we see it with the October 7th Hamas terror attacks. That's where it began to get even worse, where you had students and faculty members talk about the October 7th attacks as exhilarating. One professor labeled it awesome, and they called for October 7th 10,000 more times. We hear slogans of death to America, death to Israel. And then you fast forward to the assassination attempt on President Trump, and several professors have put out social media posts hoping for copycat attacks, wishing that the bullet actually hit President Trump in the head and killed him. And I don't think parents want their students in the classroom with these radicals.
Well, as you mentioned, one example of the extremist views professors share with students, including Berkeley College professor Marty Walsh, who commented on the attempted assassination of former President Trump, saying, "Too bad the shooter missed." What effect do remarks like that have on young, impressionable minds, Nicholas?
Well, it's disgraceful, and we're actually seeing the results in real time. We put out an article where 30% of Gen Zers actually are sympathetic to Osama bin Laden and his ideology. That's staggering. Osama bin Laden perpetrated the worst attack on U.S. soil, killing nearly 3,000 innocent civilians. We have over 5,000 plus dead from the 9/11 related injuries that they sustained at the cleanup sites. And yet 30% of Gen Zers now believe that Osama bin Laden had the right ideas. So we're cultivating an atmosphere, an environment where Americans are actually being taught to despise America, that they're being fed this anti-Americanism, and we cannot survive as a nation when our students are being taught to hate the United States.
What other examples do you have of hateful rhetoric on campus to share with us?
Well, we see it all the time. Conservatives are largely marginalized. The Leadership Institute's Riley Gaines was assaulted by giving speeches on campus. We see constantly when there's conservative speakers, Christian speakers going to college campuses, that leftist organizations will surround the speakers. They will disrupt the speakers and try and shut them down from speaking. So we're seeing increasing engagement on the ground on college campuses, particularly at the Ivy League universities, where they've become hostile to any speech that goes against their narrow points of view. And a lot of this has to do with some of the professors that are teaching the students in the classroom.
Well, I remember when I was in high school, teachers shared their anti-Vietnam War views with students. A little bit of that when I was in college too, but mostly in college it then became anti-apartheid. This seems different, though. How does it differ today?
Well, and I hear the same things. When I went to college, I had professors that were actually avowed Marxists, but they respected the institution of education and they respected differing points of view. They loved to have the back and forth in class. They loved to hear what the other side was talking about. They loved the pushback. Today's professors are radical ideologues. They're not educators. And many of them that are in the classroom aren't experts in the subject material, and so they substitute their ideology, their radicalism, and that's what we see today. It really is disgraceful because that's not what education is supposed to be about. We're supposed to be cultivating a student body to think critically, to problem solve, and then we're going to send them off to become assets to their communities, to become productive workers, to become productive citizens that understand the United States. Today, it's the exact opposite. We're teaching them to be ideologues and radical activists, and we see the results. At Google, for instance, you started to see people protesting in support of Hamas, and Google quickly fired those employees, said that this is a place of business, not one where political ideology should be tossed around. And so we are seeing that employers are starting to notice. They have announced that they won't be hiring students from certain schools because they're worried about the extremists, and they see that the students are incapable of actually integrating into the workforce and that they're going to be a problem. And that's the fastest way to nip this in the bud, is when employers begin to turn their backs on these universities, parents stop sending their children to radical universities, and the donor class, the alumni, cuts off all donations to the endowments. That will be the fastest movement, where these colleges and institutions will be forced to quickly respond to this type of extremism that we're witnessing.
Money talks. He who pays gets the say, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, Professor Nicholas Giordano, Campus Reform Higher Education Fellow, thank you for sharing your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.